In the previous two videos, we took a look at the diagnostic tools built into TIA Portal. And in this video, we're going to be looking at simulation. So let's say that you went through your code and you think you've identified a problem and you put a fix in place, but you don't want to download it to the PLC yet. You want to test out your change. Well, in TIA Portal, you have the ability to simulate both your PLC and your HMI. So let's get started with the HMI simulator. Now you might have remembered from a previous video that we went ahead and we created this screen called test screen, and we tied it to our root screen by making this button here. And let's say we want to test out that navigation, make sure everything works. Well, to start the HMI simulator, I can click on my HMI up here in the project tree and then hit this button to start the simulator. This will launch a program called WinCC Runtime Advanced, and this allows me to pretty much have the HMI on my computer. Now, before we get started, I do want to point out something very important, and that is if things are displaying incorrectly in the simulator, make sure that you have your display settings set at 100%. And this can be found at the control panel, appearance and personalization, and display. So make sure that that's at 100%. If you need to change it, this will require you to log off your computer, so make sure to save Portal, exit Portal, and then make this change. Okay, so now let's test out our navigation. If I click on my test screen button, it should take me to the test screen. And it does. And likewise, if I hit my conveyor button, it should take me back to the conveyor screen. Now it's important to note that this HMI is actively talking to my real actual PLC. And that's really convenient. That means I don't have to go walk up to an HMI in order to test the functionality of it. I can do that straight from my laptop. In other words, my laptop is acting as if it's just another HMI. So for instance, if I click this start button, I can see that this is actually controlling my machine. And if I hit stop, you'll see that the process stops. Now, if you remember from the previous video, we also made this test screen. So remember that we dragged in some tags to make our IO fields. For instance, this one is tied to my new tag, and this one down here is tied to my green push button. We also made this button here, and if I want to see what that uses, I can click on my cross-references and then go to uses, and I can see that that uses mydb.mybit. And if I drill down on that, I can see I'm using it when I press the button, when I release the button, and when I change the appearance of it. And to find out specifically what I'm doing, I can click on this hyperlink and see that, okay, for mydb.mybit, if that tag is true, then I'm turning this button green, and if it's false, then I'm keeping it gray. So let's see how we did here. I'm going to bring back my simulator, and let's press down on this button. You'll see that it turns green, so we know that that works. And I'll push in my green push button, and we'll see that that becomes true here. And I can also monitor my code alongside with this. So for instance, if I go back to my cross-references and go to mydb.mybit, and then go to where it's being used, and click on it, it'll scroll me to where it's being used, and I can monitor that. And now, side by side, I can press my button here, and we'll see that that changes state. So now let's say I made changes to my PLC, and I wanted to simulate my PLC. To do that, first I need to make sure I'm offline with all devices, and I also need to close out of my WinCC Runtime Advanced. So once I close that, I'll go up to my project and I'll just go offline with any device I have a connection to. Now the reason why I do this is because PLC Sim will prevent TIA Portal from talking to any device. When you run PLC Sim can only talk to a simulated HMI or another simulated PLC. To start the PLC simulator, I can click on my PLC in my project tree and then click on the same Simulate button. This will tell me that it's going to disable all other online interfaces, and I press OK. And then this will launch a program called PLC Sim. Now, this program does not come with the installation of Portal. This is something that you will have to install separately, but it is available at no charge on the Siemens support website. So after the project gets loaded into PLC Sim, you'll be presented with this dialog for an extended download to device. And here you'll treat it just like a normal PLC. For instance, I'm still picking that I'm going to download to it over pn/IE. The difference is on my PG-PC interface, I need to make sure I'm selecting PLC Sim for the 1200 or 1500. After that, I can pick pretty much any interface to connect to and do start search. So it finds my CPU 1500 simulation, and I can hit load. And then this will now begin the download process to the PLC Sim. So after it compiles, I hit load, and then this will transfer my project information down to my PLC simulator. And when it's done, I want to hit start all, and then press finish. And now I can actually go online with my simulated PLC, and I can monitor my code. And I can also go in here and say modify my tags. And this is not actually changing anything in my actual PLC. This is all happening within my simulated PLC. And that program can be brought up here. And from here we can see whether it's in run or stop mode, whether it has any errors or if the maintenance light is on. It's important to note that you may get errors when you run the simulated PLC, and that's because this thing is not talking to other devices, it's not talking to drives, so things like motion control might give you an error with this, but for the most part it's a great tool for being able to simulate your logic and make sure everything works. Now, along with testing your logic, PLC Sim can also be used to simulate your inputs being turned on and off. And to do that, you click on this square here, and this will take you in a maximized view, and you can always minimize that. And then I can go into what's called a sim table. So here I can add in tags for my project. For instance, here I got my push button green. I can double click and copy all of his name, and then go into my PLC Sim and then paste it into my sim table. Alternatively, I can just double click on a new row and then just type in the name of a tag, and you'll see it will autofill with the tags that match. Now, to simulate that input being turned on, I can simply click on this button here, and you'll see that that input changes in my code, and I can turn it off by clicking that button off. Now, if I want to change a numerical value, for instance, down here, I have my pot 1 upper 1500. I can go into my PLC Sim and again add that to my sim table. So I'll add in pot 1 upper 1500. And to right now it's at 0. So if I want to change it to say 3000, I can hit 3000 and you'll see it changes in the code. A nice feature within PLC Sim is that I can program sequences to occur. So this is a way to simulate a sequence of inputs or tags changing. So if I go to sequences and click on my sequence 1, you can see that I have an interface where I can program for a tag to change on a given time. So let me go ahead and open up one of my functions here. And down here at the bottom, I have a counter routine. And this counter is triggered every time the push button green is pushed in. So I'm going to add in a sequence here that will turn that green push button on and off. So to do that, I need to specify a tag, and I'm going to type in a name PB and then pick my green 1500. Okay. Delete that row. Up here, I can define an interval for each step, and so by default it's at 0. What I'll do is I'll make it 500 milliseconds, so every time I make a new row, it will make it 500 millisecond intervals. So with that selected, I will click here and drag down, and then say insert elements. And now I have spacing in increments of 500 milliseconds or half a second. I also want to take my tag here and drag him down, and then say overwrite. Okay. And now I can go in here and program this. So I'm going to say for the first second, we'll have that value equal false. And then for the next, we'll have it equal true. Again false, and again true. And now what I can do is I can go back into my code and monitor. And with my PLC Sim open, I can hit play sequence. And we'll see that it flashes on and off and then ends up on. Okay, so I can hit stop sequence. And if I wanted to, I can make this run once, or down here, I can click on that and make it repeat. So now if I hit play again, you'll see that this will turn on and off indefinitely and my counter will go up. Okay, so I can hit stop and then the sequence will stop. Also, I'm not just limited to one tag. For instance, here I can come in and add in my blue 1500 and I can make that one turn true and add him again to turn false. Also, I'm not limited by this interval. I can freely come in here and modify it. So I can put in the exact time that I want. Finally, if I want to simulate my HMI with my simulated PLC, I can absolutely do that. So let's go ahead and open up our HMI simulation. So again, you click on the HMI and then click on this simulate button. And while that's loading, I'm going to go over here to my main routine. And I will just exit out my alarm view. So let me go to the test screen. And here, if you remember, if I press that button, then I should see this turn off. So I'm going to press, and you'll see that it is interacting well. So that's pretty neat that I can simulate both my HMI and my PLC at the same time, and they can talk to each other. And this is very nice because this means that for a lot of problems, I don't have to solve them right there on the floor. I can go to my office and I can solve it there, get a good idea on how to fix it, and then when I'm ready, I can deploy it. And so when I'm ready to deploy a change, I can close out of my simulators. When I close out of my PLC Sim, it'll ask me if I want to save it, and this is how you can save your sequence table and your sim table, so I'll say yes. And that will close my PLC Sim, and by closing out of PLC Sim, that has freed up my network interface so I can talk to my devices again. And you'll also notice here at the bottom that will say that the connection was terminated. So I can go up here to the top, and I'll hit go offline. And now I can go to online and then do an extended go online. And this time I want to go from PLC Sim back to my network card, do a search, and then go back online with my real PLC. And so that about covers it for the simulators. In the next video, we're going to go over device maintenance and device backup.